Proposition for curriculum alteration in the matter of assessments. Presentation authored by Debbie Heinzman in the Department of Education, California State University, East Bay, for the class TED 642, Development and Evaluation of Curriculum, taught by Dr. Shadi Rochendale, due date December 4th, 2020. Proposition. This proposition suggests that Clayton Valley Charter High School begin a transition towards performance-based summative assessments across all departments. The intention is to further CVCHS's commitment to their profile of an eagle, preparing students for the 21st century in areas such as college and career readiness, critical thinking, and communication. That collaboratively created outline of what all stakeholders want their graduates to be is expansive and aspirational. Performance-based assessment will contribute to that end. The audience is the faculty, administration, Ms. Kathleen Coakley, resident curriculum specialist and induction program coordinator, and the executive director, Mr. Jim Scheibel. It is important to begin with a few words about the author's philosophy, because philosophy is foundational to curriculum alteration or development. Although an older-aged new teacher, she feels fortunate to have a depth of experience with education from many perspectives over 50-plus years, from being a child student in the 1960s and 70s to a parent of school-aged children from the 1980s to 2000s. From PTA board member and parent volunteer to a school secretary during the 1990s to going back to college and becoming a teacher in 2018. There have been many changes to education over that time, some positive, others not. Changes in funding formulas, financial cuts, curriculum shifts, and the like. This experience informs her everyday teaching, planning, and collaboration. Her philosophy is mostly progressive, with some Reconstructionism and Essentialism blended in. She considers herself a mentally flexible person, open to new ideas and ways of doing things, and definitely a lifetime learner. It is in this spirit and with this experience that this proposal was written and is presented. The presentation is split into 4 sections: historical and philosophical supports for the proposition, developmental psychological supports, an outline for basic implementation, and examples, a list of websites by department that offer pre-made performance-based assessments. Section 1, historical and philosophical supports. In order to move forward into the future, it is important to reflect on the past. The idea of performance-based assessment may seem new, but it is rooted in the rich history of education in this country. There are 4 basic philosophies of education discussed in Gordon, Taylor, and Oliva, and paraphrased here. The most liberal, Reconstructionism, has a focus on schools being agents of change, addressing social and political problems as well as academic subjects. Then there is progressivism, with an emphasis on student-centered curriculum, tailored to individual needs and interests. In progressive circles, education is a lifelong endeavor, not the ultimate attainment of permanent knowledge. One of the oldest philosophies, perennialism, reaches back in time to Aristotle and St. Thomas Aquinas. It proposes that the purpose of education is to discipline the mind and the pursuit of truth, an ultimate fixed truth based in the classics of Western civilization. Perennialists believe that education is for those who have the interest and aptitude to pursue the intended learning. More aligned with perennialism than the other two is essentialism, stating that academic subjects must be mastered with the use of facts and skills, that the teacher is the source of necessary knowledge, and the students are to be molded by and filled with this knowledge. Subjects such as art and music are not critical to education in the essentialists' world. Across the history of education in the United States, each of these philosophies have waxed and waned in popularity, sometimes for decades at a time, until the philosophical pendulum swung in a different direction. CVCHS's reality in 2020, however, in reading the mission statement and profile of an eagle, is that aspects of each of these philosophies are incorporated into our curriculum and instruction in one way or another. In particular, though, performance-based assessment fits most precisely in the progressive philosophy. Because education is not a product to be learned, for example, facts and motor skills, but a process that continues as long as one lives, learning by doing and demonstrating by doing fulfills that ideal. Progressives were also proponents of the scientific method of problem solving, which involves, among other steps, experimentation and synthesis of observation, requiring thought and action on the part of those applying it. Although according to Gordon et al., 2019, progressives at times applied the scientific method too broadly and were cautioned by Taba in 1962 not to neglect other critical thinking skills. The scientific method is the basis for most work in science classrooms and could be applied to performance-based assessments for those subjects. Another support for task-oriented assessment is found in Chapter 3 of Ornstein and Hunkins, 2017. In 1930, researchers from the University of Chicago published 2 volumes of Curriculum Matters. In the second of these 2 volumes, the authors put forward what they considered an exemplary curriculum, listing 9 important considerations. Number 7 was consider problem-solving activities and practice in choosing alternatives, such as role-playing, independent learning, and cooperative learning. Section 2, Developmental Psychological Arguments. As important as examining the historical and philosophical underpinnings for performance-based assessment is recognizing the developmental psychological ones. Constructivist psychology supports performance tasks. According to Kenneth T. Henson's definition of constructivism in 2006, learning occurs only when the learner ties newly acquired information to previously gained understandings. From Gordon, Taylor, and Oliva, 2019. Students learn when given relevant and real-life situations to explore and examine, and that is what these tasks are. Again, in Gordon et al., 2019, they wrote about Theodore Sizer, renowned educator and author of the book Horace's School, among many others, who favored what he termed exhibitions of performance to graduate with a diploma, instead of relying on tests alone. Additionally, performance-based assessments demonstrate use of higher-level thinking according to Bloom's taxonomy, discussed in Ornstein and Hunkins, a standard tool of defining depth of knowledge in curriculum development. This taxonomy has been revised over the years by many researchers, but is almost universally agreed to include some form of these 6 cognitive processes: remember, understand, apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Each of these processes builds upon the last and culminates in precisely those necessary to successfully complete a performance assessment: analyze, evaluate, and create. Lastly, performance-based assessment is supported by the science of learning concepts, accepted by many cognitive scientists. For example, what Gordon et al. Notes is that there is an SOL generation effect. When students generate or create responses on an assessment, they score higher than they would if they took a multiple choice, matching, or drag and drop style test. Section 3, implementation. Transparency and clear communication are key. With philosophical, historical, psychological, and scientific bases established in favor of performance tasks as assessments, how would CVCHS implement the changes, and what barriers would have to be overcome? First, teachers should assess their students' thoughts about this proposal and garner their suggestions. Gordon et al. Note that when teachers seek feedback from students, the probability that student learning will increase is high. Quoted from Hattie in 2009. Involvement of the community helps, but only if the district or school educates and informs everyone involved in a transparent manner. The facilitator of this effort needs to be an excellent communicator themselves, able to balance the needs of all stakeholders. Curriculum is complex, and change needs to be a natural part of development and implementation. Clear, honest communication with stakeholders is the best way to establish and maintain that change is normal and can be positive, and reduce the natural resistance to doing things differently. After gathering feedback from stakeholders, teachers should work as departments and then as content teams to examine different types of performance tasks that fit their subject matter and make decisions such as what type of assessment is most appropriate for a particular unit. Samples should be generated and shared with administrators, parents, and students before final decisions are made. There are many research and standards-based websites and organizations who generate these tasks, often for free. Here is a possible flowchart for implementation of these changes. A sampling of these websites are listed by department following these slides. If a team decides to develop their own, rubrics must be written so that grading will be uniform and fair throughout. And lastly, section 4, examples of websites. Pardon me. We'll start with these 3. I'm not going to read every one, but suffice to say that with a little bit of research, I was able to find all of these for world languages, mathematics, history, and move forward towards these 4: science, physical education, visual and performing arts, and English. Thank you for listening to this presentation, and I hope to be hearing from you soon. The resources used to write this paper are listed here. Thank you for listening. I appreciate your time.